Well, what do we have here? Looks like another poor, unfortunate soul found their way to the wasteland. I guess it's not all that bad, though, considering the Iron Witch done went and turned you into one of them Grimslingers, or whatever they're called. Now you can sling spells with the rest of them. But you ain't alone, though. We're all out here. We're all looking for a peace. And you ain't just gonna be fighting us. No, no. You're gonna be after dealing with your brothers and sisters. More of them Grimslingers from all over the place. Why don't you do yourself a favor and get on while you still can, and keep them itchy spell slinging fingers light before someone gets you first.
Hey there gamers, it's Raine from Initiative Tabletop, and today we're taking a look at Grimslingers, a brand new game from Greenbrier Games. This game is a card game unlike any other card game you've ever played. In this game, you take the role of a Grimslinger, where you sling spells with one another. You can play the game in either a versus mode, where it's a bunch of Grimslingers shooting spells at each other either in a free-for-all battle or in teams. And you can play the game in a single-player or co-op mode where you experience a large story arc that expands through a vast campaign where you find yourselves fighting all kinds of different types of creatures, gaining loot, leveling up, enhancing your abilities, and much more. Now, this was a game that was originally on Kickstarter, developed and created by a guy named Stephen Gibson. He created the rules, the artwork, everything. You see it, he made it. And Greenbrier Games picked it up to help get it into production, and I was lucky enough to grab a copy. And what I want to do is just kind of crack this baby open and show you exactly what it's like to sling spells in the vast wasteland. Okay, so when you get the box of Grimslingers open, you're going to notice a lot of things. There's going to be a little meeple and a d6. You're going to have, of course, your rule book. You're going to have a storybook. You're also going to have a little player mat. And you're going to have a ton of cards. Now, I went ahead and separated the cards out here for duels, which is the versus mode. I'll explain that first, and then we'll go into the single player and co-op campaign. When it comes to Grimslingers, there are some basic cards that you're going to need to be familiar with. The first one is your actual Grimslinger card. Now, there's quite a few of these in here. The artwork is phenomenal. I'm really a big fan, especially because you can play as a cat. The artwork is really awesome. On the back of the Grimslinger cards, it's got like a little story for each Grimslinger, which is awesome, and it'll also tell you how the Grimslinger was submitted. You know, if somebody from a Kickstarter submitted it, things like that. So you can just soak that in. This guy's kind of like Abraham Lincoln, vampire killer, so I like that guy, vampire hunter. Now, none of these is better than the other, which is what I like. I mean, it simply just comes down to preference and reading the story and seeing what you like. Now, each Grimslinger is aided by an animus. Now, the animus is basically the same thing. They all basically do the same. They have different artwork on them, and the animus is kind of what, you know, tracks some of your energy, lets you cast some of your spells, things like that. So you've got your Grimslinger card and you've got your animus. You need one of each in order to play the game, because you need to choose which Grimslinger you are and what type of animus you want. And then there are two other cards that you're going to need. You're going to need a health tracker and an energy tracker. Alright, now these are really simple. In order to track your health, you simply take your Grimslinger card, put it over top, and slide it to where your health currently is. So this one's currently at 10. If I were to take a damage, I would slide it up, be at 9, so on and so forth. And the cool thing is that each one of these has a little quote, and then there's two different sides. So you can choose kind of what side you want to go with. There's some funny little jokes and quips on each of those, and the same thing goes here. You're going to use your animus, which is going to cover your energy card, and it's going to tell you, okay, I have this much energy, slide it up, I've got that much energy. It's kind of a unique concept. I like it. I like the ability of being able to choose whichever Grimslinger I want based on, what I'm feeling like. So you've got your Grimslingers, your animus, your health tracker, energy tracker, and then you've got the bulk and beef of the game, the actual spells themselves. Now you've got everything from basic elemental spells like lightning, ice, earth, fire, all the way through to special spells like dark, light, amnesia. Now these are some of the special spells that you can get when you're playing a more advanced game of Grimslingers. But for the basic game setup, each person involved in the game is going to get a Grimslinger, an animus, a health tracker, and energy tracker, and then a set of basic spells. You'll also use these cards, which are target cards. Whenever there's more than 2 people in the game, you'll choose a color, and that will be your color. For instance, this is blue, and you'll choose, you get a set of 5 of these each because you're targeting the 5 other players in a 6-player game. For the versus, it's 2 to 6. And what you'll do is you'll keep these with you because that'll determine who you're targeting during the round. And then finally, you see some cards here that kind of look like regular playing cards. And these are for determining whenever you have kind of like a spell face-off, and we'll get into that here in just a moment. So these are the basic types of cards you're going to be dealing with in the duel. And I'll show you one final type of card just because if you're playing with the advanced rules, you'll have the option to use some of these item cards. Now these item cards can be anything from dual wielding pistols to a special bow. Those will be used for the advanced duels, which I won't get into at the moment. So here I've got a setup for a basic duel. I've got my Grimslinger with my health tracker underneath. I've got my animus with my energy tracker underneath. Both of them are set at 10. And then I've got my target cards, which are right here. Now, for a basic duel, you're going to use just your basic spells. But for a more advanced duel, you can put in signature spells, and you can also use item cards. So the way that a duel works is simple. Now the duel takes place over different phases. The first phase is the standoff. During the standoff, you can sacrifice hit points for energy points. Now the reason why you might need energy points is because your spells might take energy in order to use them. Spells that you get damaged with will say that you need to expend energy. Now the most common reason why you need EP is to actually use your animus abilities, and I'll go ahead and get into those because those are used in the standoff phase. Now, during the standoff phase, each animus is going to have a purge ability and a reload ability. I'm going to try to get this here so you can see it. The reload ability allows you to put 4 discarded spells back into your hand, and it costs 3 EP. And purge, you can discard up to 2 spells and gain an EP for each spell discarded. That's important because when you use a spell in Grimslingers, it goes to your discarded pile. The only way to get those back is through your animus. Now, sometimes a card will get deactivated, which you just put it to the side like this here, and it's deactivated. And we'll talk about that in a moment. But you can sacrifice your HP for EP, then you can use a purge or reload ability, or you can use your surge ability, which is on the back of the anima cards. I know I've been calling them animus, but they're called anima. So on the back of the anima card, you've got a little bit of text here, and I'll read that to you, and he's mad. Basically, the surge ability says, for this turn, +1 to the spell number value of the effects for the next spell card you play. You also ignore the first card that causes you to exhaust if you're in a face-off. And the cost of you to use that ability is to deactivate 3 spells. And again, we'll go into that. I'll tell you what number values and all that are here in just a moment. Alright, now in an advanced duel, you can also trade active cards with your teammates, or you can draw an item card. You can play an item card with the standoff or passive type, or use an archetype ability, which I'll get into in a little while. After all that's done, you go into phase 2, which is the draw. So you're going to select a spell card from your hand, and each spell card has a bit of information on it, okay? So the spell cards have a title, what type of spell they are. They also will have a weakness or a strength here. It'll tell you like wind beats fire, ice beats wind, this beats that, and whatnot. And then it'll have a cool image. And then it's got some what are called effects down here. Now these effects can be anything from making you discard a card, get rid of active spells, lose EP, lose HP, damage, things like that. But what these cards also have is a targeting down here and a little number next to the target. Now the number is called the resolution number. Spells are resolved in the order of resolution, which we'll get into here in just a moment. Once you decide what card you're going to play during the duel, you hold it face down in front of you. Once every player has chosen their card, you yell draw, and then each card is revealed. You can, instead of playing a spell, you can choose to pass. If you choose to pass, you still reveal the card, and then you gain 2 EP on your turn and you don't play anything. You can also, instead of playing a spell, you can play a standard type item, which allows you to do a lot of different things depending on what the item is. The item can also be combined with a spell if it's the combined type, but again, that's some more advanced rules there. Now we go into the meat and taters of the duel, which is Phase 3, the Aftermath. During Phase 3, you immediately put deactivated cards, remember, cards like this, from your deactivated pile back into your hand. Not your discard, but your deactivated. And the way cards will get deactivated is a spell will cause it, it might be a cost to do something, things like that. Then you deduct the energy costs of the cards you just played, including those that may be described in the card's effects. After that, you resolve cards starting with a resolution number of 1 and then going all the way up to the highest resolution number. Now, if you're defeated, then your card is not resolved if you're defeated before it's resolved. That's really simple. But here's where things get kind of hairy, alright? If more than one player played a card with the same resolution number, like if we all played water, but we're targeting different people, then you're going to use this D6. You're going to roll the D6 here, and you're going to, whoever gets the highest, their spell goes off first, and then you apply in that order. But if 2 players play an element spell with an unaltered resolution number of 9 and they target each other, like for instance, if I play a water that has a resolution number of 9, because you'll notice that each of the basic elements here has a resolution number of 9. So if 2 cards with a resolution number of 9 are played and they target each other, for instance, if I target you and you target me, then those cards are contested. Now, when the cards are contested, you basically check, you're going to be checking the weakness. So for instance, if I played water and you played earth, okay? Let's say this is how it goes. I played water to you, you played earth to me. Water beats earth. So what would happen is in order to resolve the contested cards, earth would be beaten because my water effect says so. It's just the weakness, and then my card resolves. But let's say that we played something like water and wind, okay? So they don't beat each other out. At that point, we have a face-off. Imagine 2 Dragon Ball Z characters kamehamehaing each other at the same time, and then there's that epic battle of beams going on. This is essentially what we're doing, and that's what uses this special deck right here of playing cards. Whenever you have a face-off, you are going to set your spells aside that were played, okay? Then each player draws a card from the top of the face-off deck. I got a 1, my opponent got a 3. Then we have a choice to either push or stay. If we push, you're trying your best to get closest to 11 without going over. If you hit 11, you do something that's called apex. If you go over 11, then you have exhausted. If you apex during this point and then you played a card that does damage, that card will deal 1 extra damage. But if a player during a face-off exhausts, so let's say I pushed, and let's say my opponent pushed, so my opponent's at 7 and I'm at 3. Well, I'm obviously going to push again, and I'm at 7 and he pushes again. Now he's at 11 and my opponent's most likely going to stay, but I'm going to push again to try and get to 11. Well, I most certainly went over with this 5. That means I exhausted. If you exhaust during this phase, any damage that's done to you is doubled. The winner of the face-off applies their spell effects, but the player who lost the face-off does not. Their card is negated. Now that you've resolved any contested cards, if you use your surge ability, you flip your anima back over, and then you discard the cards you played unless the card says not to, or it's already been placed in the discard pile. And then if any person in the duel is still at above 0 HP, you just keep going. And then you're going to keep playing cards, using your anima ability, using different card abilities to get cards back. And I should also mention that, so these are all the target cards for the blue player. If we're playing in a more than 2-person game, when I select the spell from my hand, I also have to select a target card. Because this will say, okay, well, I'm targeting the red player, or I'm targeting the green player, so on and so forth. It's really simple. Now that we've covered the basics of a duel, this is where the craziness comes in. And by craziness, I mean total awesomeness. This is the game set up for the cooperative mode or the story mode, and you can play this mode with 1 to 4 players, which makes it awesome because you can go through a unique narrative with just 1 player, and you get all the game has to offer you, and you don't miss out on anything. So as you'll notice, we've got the little map here that kind of acts as the game board. You're going to need your die. You've got your little meeple tracker to show you where you are on the board. We've got an item deck that's quite large. Hank the Hunter, he will show up every now and then. We've got a deck of signature spells. Your setup is pretty much the same as in a regular duel, but there's a change I'm going to get into in a moment. These are the types of creatures that you could fight in the wasteland. We've got some different modifiers to make the creatures different so you're not running into the same jackalope every time. You've also got some event cards and your Get Lucky or Die Trying deck, the number deck. So the first thing that makes this a bit unique is that you're going to have what are called archetypes. Now these archetypes will kind of tell you a special ability that you can use, and then they're also going to tell you the starting health and EP that you get. And it'll have a little bit of backstory on the back here. You've got plenty of these to choose from. There's Hell's Fury, True Grit, Dirty Cheat, Resurrect, Blood Feast, and Spell Flare. These are all the abilities. Now, the actual archetypes are Witchborn, Vampire, Revenant, Outlaw, Forgotten, and Daemon. These are the types, whereas those are the special abilities that you can use on your turn. So you can go through these and get them distributed randomly. You can choose one however you want. Let's say I'm just going to choose the Daemon. Now this will actually track your level. You've got a level tracker here, and sometimes you'll go up a level, which will give you different things. Usually it's like, your max hand size is increased, you can draw a new signature spell, hand size, and then you can gain HP and EP, which is pretty cool because it's a way of advancement so every game's not going to be the same. So you're going to start off with your basic spells, and then you'll gain more as you go through. So now that I've kind of explained what the setup is about, this is exactly how you play through the story mode. You take turns that are going to consist of 3 phases, just kind of like the versus dueling aspect of the game. So the first phase is the narrative phase, where you're going to check prerequisites, read story moments, things like that, and then continue on. You're going to then go into the node resolution phase, which each one of these pips on here is a little node, and then you've got like a map legend which will tell you, oh, this is an attack, oh, this is an event that happens, oh, this is a resting way, and here's your path to get through them. And that's how the map kind of works out. So depending on the node that you're on, you'll resolve it in the node resolution phase, and then you'll move. So players will then decide as a group where to move their the little meeple to get on with the story. Speaking of the story, this is the story book that comes with the game. It's really awesome. Each story is going to be consisting of different parts. For instance, so chapter 1 has 6 parts. Chapter 2 has 4 parts, Chapter 3 has 4 parts, and then Chapter 4 has 5 parts, because there's 4 chapters in this book. And you can play through all of them. You can start at the beginning. You can start in the middle. Now, when I say start in the middle, you can start at chapter 2 or chapter 3. You don't have to go through the first chapter, but you have to complete the chapter in its entirety. You can't start in the middle of chapter 3. Let's take a look in the storybook at referencing how to go through the different turns. So, for instance, the first thing we're going to do is the narrative phase, and we're going to check our prerequisites. So the prerequisite for starting this is to place your character piece on the Valley Haven map node. And the Valley Haven map node is this one right here. Now that we've done that, you're going to read this part. The narrator's going to read this part. And then it'll say action, because we have to resolve actions that are required by the story. This one tells you to look through the item deck and give each player 2 supplies items. And that can be, the first 2 you come across, randomize, however you want to do it, just as long as you do it. And then your objective, head out into the Valley of Death and travel to any attack or event node. So, on the next turn, we're going to check the prerequisite, which we must have successfully resolved an attack node or event node, which we haven't. So we don't read this part and resolve it. If you don't resolve a part of the story, you do not go through with the action. So we'll skip that. And once we're done with actions, we're going to resolve the node. The node is an event node, so we would draw an event card and resolve it. It says players choose an action as a group, and then we have to choose one, and then we have resolved it, and this will be discarded. Alright, once that happens, we can then move again. So we would decide to move, let's say here. Then we'll go ahead and start it all over again with resolving the prerequisites, which this time, let's say the next turn, we would have, because we resolved this event. Once we've successfully resolved an attack node or an event node, we would read this, do the action. It's that simple. You just continue going and going until you get through the chapter. Now, let's stop for a moment and kind of go over some things. So, a lot of event cards will have you making decisions. Some of them will say, hey, you resolve this node as if it were this. Choose an action. Each player chooses one action, or players choose an action as a group, which could be anything from sacrificing EP and HP to giving up items to doing all kinds of things. When you land on a node that's an attack, you roll the 6-sided die to determine what attacks you. 1 is bandits, 2 is a jackalope, 3 is a peyote scorpion, 4 is a dune worm, 5 is a specter, and 6 is chupacabras. So on this case, we would be fighting the peyote scorpion. We're going up against the peyote scorpion, and this is how we're going to set up the duel, because it's basically going to play out just like a duel between versus players, but there are going to be some changes. So you're going to take the portrait card of the creature that you're fighting and turn it over, and it's going to tell you how much HP and EP it has based on the number of players. So for just me, it's going to have 5 EP and 5 HP. That's where these cards come into play. Notice that portrait card has 2 arrows on it. And so I'm going to put the arrow at 5 here, and I'm going to put the arrow at 5 here. That shows me how much HP and EP this creature has. I don't know how creatures have EP, but they do. It's the wasteland. You don't ask questions. Then you're going to take this specific creature cards with the general creature cards, and you are going to shuffle them up. Shuffle, shuffle, shuffle. And these cards can basically go up here. When you get ready to set up the duel is going to work out, like I said, somewhat like a regular duel when you're facing off against other players. The creature is going to take the top card of its deck and put it face down, and you are going to choose a card in your hand. So I'm going to choose ice because I want to slow this guy down. Alright, so I've chosen my card, it has chosen its card. Now we're going to resolve them. So the creature cards are going to have a resolution number as well and a target. So when we reveal them, the creature's card was a 5, mine was a 9, mine's going to go off later. So you follow the instructions on the card. This creature gains 3 HP and is immune to all effects this turn. Any foe may pay 3 EP to aim at a weak point in the creature's carapace, allowing their cards to ignore the effects of this card. Which I probably would do, because it would take 2 damage and deduct 2 EP. So you would adjust your health tracker and your energy tracker. You discard the cards played to the discard pile for the creature. Discard the card you played to your discard pile. You can still use your reload and purge abilities. And then you're going to check the EP and the HP of the creature. If the creature still has HP left, you're just going to keep going until it's dead. And once you defeat a creature, you can turn the card over to see what kind of rewards you can get, which this one says, if defeated, you can draw the peyote poison ritual item from the item deck. Each player also gains 1 level and may draw a random item from the deck. Once you defeat a creature, you're going to separate the cards into their respective decks. You'll place everything back in order so that way you're ready to go when another attack happens. And that's pretty much it. You're going to follow the same thing through each duel or attack that you get into. So you'll keep moving around the map, you'll keep activating nodes, you'll keep going through the story booklet, and you're going to uncover a great story as you go. You're going to get some great items and some loot as you're going, and make a really awesome story for yourself out in the wasteland, and hopefully you don't expire. Now, you can be defeated. If you're defeated in creature duels and you're playing a solo game, you don't get anything, and you're revived to a certain number of HP and EP based on the difficulty level that you're playing. If you get defeated on landmark nodes, all negative effects in that landmark continue to the movement phase, and then you revive again. If you get defeated on event nodes, then you immediately discard the event and then revive yourself. But in co-op, you have the ability to play as your anima. And if you play as the anima, you can do all kinds of little sorts of great things, try to help out your opponents, and then you can be revived there at the end. You can also be defeated by story parts, which it'll kind of tell you what happens. But for the main part, if you're defeated while playing solo when resolving an action part of the story, it usually means that the game is over, because at that point, there's no way for you to continue on. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed that rough look at Grimslingers. And there's so much more to the game that I couldn't explain just for time reasons and time restraints. Everything that you need to know is in the rule book. If you guys are interested, let me know, and I will do a how to play Grimslingers. Maybe we'll even set up some kind of campaign video playthrough for everybody to see. It's a lot of fun. It's a quick game. I like how fast it is to get it out and then just duel your buddies. Sometimes it can be a little monotonous unless you use the signature spells. I would definitely recommend dealing them out randomly so that way not everybody has the same type of spells every game, because that's seriously going to get unplayable at some point. But I will say, I mean, the campaign is great, being able to go through and do all of these different things, because I'm a huge fan of choose your own adventure type stuff. I love games like Tales of the Arabian Nights. This kind of gives me that, but it's a little more streamlined, so that way I can go through it all on my own if I want, or I can have friends come over and we can sling spells together, which is pretty awesome. I do really enjoy the artwork in this game. I love the thought concept behind all of the different Grimslingers, and the fact that fans were able to create their own slingers and get them in the game is just phenomenal. I mean, you can be a cat, which Kay absolutely loves. You can be a little puppy, you can be the Abraham Lincoln looking guy, you can even make up your own Grimslinger. The archetypes help set all of the slingers apart. I mean, there's seriously something here for everybody. If you get a chance, check out Grimslingers, and definitely get yourself a copy as soon as it is available. I want to say thank you for watching this video. I hope to see all of you guys at Gen Con, and until then, happy gaming.